One of the biggest upsets that I've seen in a very long time. I would have never predicted this result. Alexandra Eala takes out Iga Swiatek in the quarterfinals of the Miami Open. And just to put into context why this is such a shocking result, Eala was playing on the ITF circuit on the WTA, so one step below WTA tournaments. And she was losing early against players ranked between 100 and 200 and ranked between 200 and 300 going out in the second round. And she hasn't really played anyone anywhere near to Iga's level. She's been losing to players outside of the top 100. So if anyone would have predicted that Eala was going to make it to the semifinals of the Miami Open, I think that person would have been called crazy. No rhyme or reason to it. But of course, Eala is an incredibly talented player. She was number 2 in the world in juniors. She's extremely talented. And in addition to Andreeva, who's also doing really well, Eala is 19 years old, and she's come on the scene in this tournament in a spectacular fashion because not only did she just take out Swiatek, she took out Madison Keys, which surprised me a lot. And I'm going to get into why that was such a big surprise to me. And she also took out Ostapenko. So she's beaten 3 Grand Slam champions in a row. And when you look at Eala's game, she's left-handed, and she has one of the most versatile forehands that I've seen on the WTA Tour. So she can spin the forehand and hit it quite heavy. She can flatten the forehand out. She is extremely good at taking the ball higher and bringing it down. She is also an exceptional returner. In fact, in the match today, out of 10 service games, Iga got broken 8 times. And we're going to get to, towards the end of this video, what Iga's issues are. But in any case, Eala, very talented player. But the big weakness is her serve. The speeds are very low. I'm sure you guys have noticed that, especially on the second serve, if you watched any of her matches. So you would think that she would get absolutely destroyed on her serve. But that is not necessarily the case. Yes, she does get broken, but someone like Ostapenko, Madison Keys, or Iga should be able to absolutely demolish that slow serve. But one thing that you have to remember is that Eala is left-handed, and she does put some funk on her serve. So she slices her serve most of the time. And just the fact that she's lefty, even though the serve is slower, it is still a tricky serve to return. Now, what impressed me the most in Eala's game throughout this tournament in Miami was how composed and focused she was in pressure situations. I was sure that when she went up 6-2, 2-0 against Iga, and all of a sudden Iga started playing a little bit better, she was fist pumping. I thought this match was going to flip and Iga was going to win easy. But Eala stayed in this match. She didn't check out mentally. And even when the match got very tight, she was rock solid and was not committing a lot of mistakes. So super impressive performance from the mental standpoint as well. And now let's get to Iga. Last week in Indian Wells, when Iga, in anger in her match against Andreeva, hit a ball into the ground, and the ball boy was standing right there, and the ball went into the stands, she received a lot of criticism afterwards in social media, and she responded with a lengthy note on Instagram. And I made a video on intuitivetennis.com. This video is not going to be available on YouTube. This is a premium only video, so I recommend that you become a subscriber at Intuitive Tennis Premium. But I'm going to tell you some of the things that I discussed in this video. And first and foremost, I talked about this many times, we cannot wait until somebody gets hit in the face with a ball. Most dangerously, somebody can get hit in the eye, just like the chair umpire in the Shapovalov Davis Cup match. So are we going to wait until somebody gets hit in the face to disqualify a player for hitting a ball into the stands? During the Indian Wells tournaments, it was absolutely ridiculous. Mute in the first round match against Rune hit 2 consecutive balls at full speed into the stands. Even Mira Andreeva in the final hit a ball into the stands. There has to be a harsher punishment for hitting the ball, whether it's into the back fence or in the stands. And players, in my opinion, should get harsh punishments, maybe even automatic DQ. Because again, the rule is that if somebody gets hit in the face accidentally, whether it be a ball boy or a chair umpire, then it's a DQ. But if you hit that same ball and nobody gets hit, then it's okay and the player gets to continue the match. This is ridiculous. It's very dangerous. Remember, the tennis ball fits right into the eye socket and it can take somebody's eye out. And of course, this is unintentional. I'm not accusing any player of intentionally trying to hurt someone. They're just angry and ripping the ball. So naturally, after this incident, Iga received a lot of criticism on social media. And she has been receiving a lot of criticism in the past. And Iga responded with a note. For me, the solution for Iga's criticism are simple. First of all, you want to avoid social media if you can't handle social media, or maybe you just don't read the comments. But I understand that's tough, and some people just end up reading it anyway. And some people are more affected by criticism than others. And yes, social media is terrible, and players get all kinds of private messages that are absolutely horrendous. So this is a big problem, and players are suffering from this. They're being criticized a lot, most of the time undeservingly so. But in Iga's case, the criticism is deserved. So what she can do right now to stop the criticism is start showing better sportsmanship. And I hope I'm using the right word. Maybe it's sportswomanship, but I'm sure it's sportsmanship. You got to excuse me. English is my third language. But if you are familiar with some of the Iga antics on the court, you know that she does the hand thing to distract the player when they have a very easy ball. She sometimes stomps the feet or hits the ground with her racket. You can watch compilations of this on YouTube. But there's another thing that's much worse, and that is a situation where Iga runs down a drop shot. And I always give players the benefit of the doubt in that situation. Sometimes players don't necessarily feel or know that the ball has bounced twice, especially if they're running at full speed. So the benefit of the doubt is for the player. However, there is one exception. When you hit the ball into the ground on your side and the ball goes over the net, you can feel and you can see that the ball has hit the ground on your side of the court. And Iga, in many occasions, has done that. She is one of the best athletes that we've ever seen on a tennis court. And she runs balls down that other players wouldn't even get to. But what happens sometimes is that either the ball bounces twice, Iga keeps playing, okay, we can give her the benefit of the doubt there. But in many occasions, Iga will run the ball down and it'll go off her frame into the ground over to the other side. What does Iga do? She doesn't concede the point, but she keeps playing. Now, the antics with the hands and the hitting the ground, I've not seen that in a while. So it's possible that Iga stopped doing that. However, when it comes to not conceding the point and continuing to play after the ball has clearly bounced on the ground on her side, this is still going on, and it happened in Indian Wells a couple of weeks ago in the match against Yastremska. Iga clearly hit the ground when she ran down the Yastremska drop shot, and instead of conceding the point, the umpire, of course, didn't see what happened. Iga continued to play. And the ridiculous thing is that she, when she's playing at her highest level, destroys opponents. In fact, that match against Yastremska was 2-0, if I remember correctly. So it's completely unnecessary to try to take that point. Now, I understand that Iga is a great fighter and Rafa is her idol, and Iga does fight for every point. But the lack of sportsmanship in certain occasions, I'm not saying this goes on all the time, but we have eyes and we're looking at it and we're seeing it. So the criticism in those instances is 100% deserved. So Iga doesn't like criticism. It's possible that her performances this year have been worse than in the past years because of this increased criticism. So a good way to stop the criticism is to start conceding some of these points and stop with the antics on the court. The criticism will stop once you start showing better sportsmanship. Now, Iga seems to believe that people don't like her because of her personality. And I can tell you that that's not necessarily the case. The beautiful thing about the game of tennis is that you can be an introvert and excel at this sport because it is an individual sport. So it's not the case that only extroverts are the players that are liked. Remember Bjorn Borg, Stefan Edberg. These guys were very quiet, but beloved. But how about Steffi Graf? She is known to be an introvert and quiet, and she didn't really engage with her fans that much on the court, and she was beloved. So it's important for Iga to stay true to herself. It's okay to show anger, but make sure that you're not putting anybody else in danger, and don't hit balls into the ground or into the stands. This is inexcusable behavior for any player. Here are the facts about Iga. She is clearly not herself. She is missing balls that we're never seen her miss before. She's spraying forehands. She's making unforced errors. And in my opinion, Iga has the potential to be the greatest female clay court player in the history of tennis. There's no doubt about that in my mind. She is one of the best athletes that I've ever seen on the tennis court. Even when she does her antics with the hands or she taps the ground, even when she does that, she's showing unbelievable athleticism. I try to copy those moves and I do them very slowly. Iga does those moves extremely fast. So she's an unbelievable athlete, but clearly the issues now are not all technical. There are some technical problems. I'll get to that in a second, but it's purely a mental problem. And based on what she wrote on Instagram a few days ago, this is a problem that's for sure solvable. Now, regarding her technique, Iga has one of the best forehands in the game. She has one of the best backhands in the game. She is maybe the best mover on the WTA Tour. But for some reason, she has destroyed her service action. She used to have a nice serve, but for a year or maybe even longer now, she serves with what I call a reverse lag. And on Intuitive Tennis Premium, that problem is categorized as a common problem at the recreational level, because you don't want to serve with a reverse lag. What that is you raise your hitting arm up first and then you toss the ball and there goes the serve. So you don't have any continuity in that type of serve. The rhythm is very awkward, and maybe as a progression, if you're working on something else, maybe this is okay. There are some things on the serve that can get fixed with a progression like that, where you start somebody out in the trophy phase and you use that for a while until you then transition back to a normal serve with a full rhythm. But Iga, for a while now, has been stuck with this reverse lag serve. And the problem for Iga is the following. In the past, even when she was at her absolute best, her serve was exposed by big power players. If that big power player also happened to be a big server, that type of player could take out Iga, whether it's Noskova or Alexandra. These type of players have beaten Iga. So on top of Eala, out of nowhere, making the semis of Miami, I was even more shocked that a game style like Eala's could beat Iga. Yes, Eala has one of the best returns that I've seen in a long time. She was taking advantage of Iga's serve weakness, and the second serve was not working well today from Iga. But I thought that Iga, with her incredible returns, was going to break Eala even more than she did. So the fact that Iga lost to a player like this, no knock on Eala, she's a phenomenal player. But again, Iga lost her serve 8 out of 10 times. So the technical thing that needs to improve on Iga is a serve. But overall, the biggest challenge for Iga right now is getting her mental game right.